Hello and welcome to the seventh episode of What's the Difference podcast. Today we are going to be discussing a really important issue for those of us who live with invisible disabilities, and that is mobility. Now, for some of us, we might look like we're absolutely normal, and that's the whole thing about invisible disabilities is looking normal. But when it comes right down to it, we might need to take the elevator to get somewhere. Sometimes we might need to be in a wheelchair. Sometimes we might need a little extra assistance from another person helping us. And sometimes we literally cannot take the stairs. This is a topic that I've wanted to discuss for a while because when I was younger, I still have an accessible parking permit. This has been with me since I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. And I remember at one point in my life, and more than once did I get glares, but at least at one point in my life, parking in an accessible parking spot and then having somebody say, "You're not disabled, why are you parking there?" So this is something I've wanted to talk about for a really long time. So let's welcome our cast. First, we're gonna say hello to Stacie.
Hi.
And
Hi, everybody.
Sorry, I'm cutting you off already, Cynthia.
Hi.
Cynthia. Hi. Okay, might be a little bit on delay. Sometimes, internet problems. 2020 it is. And Sam.
Hey.
Okay, we're all here. And we have a special guest today. And she's actually a friend of Sam's, but she's doing some very important work herself. Everybody welcome Shaini.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Excited.
Yeah, and everybody looks so beautiful today. I have to say that everybody looks awesome. I think because we're actually recording this on the first day of summer and everybody has that summer glow right now. So really cool. Everybody looks awesome today. So Shaini, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're here.
Oh, perfect. So my name is Shaini. I'm 30 years old and I live in Montreal, Quebec. And at the age of 21, I got diagnosed with a rare eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa. I got diagnosed by fluke, so I really didn't know or see any symptoms till after I got diagnosed and was like, oh, that makes sense. Like my childhood makes sense now. So basically I have, at this very moment, I have vision basically only in one eye. My right eye, not related to RP, has no vision at all because I have a macular hole which has taken my vision, and I'm currently waiting for surgery. But with my RP, I only have, I guess you can call tunnel vision. I don't have any peripheral vision, and I don't have any nighttime vision. And I also have no depth perception. So when I look down a flight of stairs, I just see a ramp. So that can be a little fun.
And in Montreal, there are a lot more stairs than in Toronto.
And they're all made of cobblestone.
Yep.
Montreal is very difficult.
Sam found that out the fun way in the winter, right, Sam?
Oh, it was great. Ice, cobblestone. The opportunities were endless, you guys.
But yeah, so and now I'm from a South Asian community, so for the longest time I did have, not that I did, I had to hide my disability in a sense, so I didn't really talk about it. I kind of kept it to myself, which led to a lot of like mental health issues. But then at one point in my mid-20s, I decided to speak up about it, and now I kind of make it a point of my life to be an advocate for the blind, and I use that using my social media platform and being able to help people learn about it, because I myself was, I guess you can call me ignorant, that didn't know how many different eye diseases there are in this world. And I only started learning once I had to learn for myself. So now I make it a point so everyone else is aware, so they can help and not be ignorant like I was before.
And I've got to say, I like the way you're constantly emphasizing the word "I" because it means two things. It means you and your eyes. Yes. So there you go. It's a pun. And then, so tell me a little bit about how Sam and you have worked together.
So I got to meet Sam like 2 years ago. So in 2015, I started being a young leader for the Fighting Blindness Canada. And 2 years ago, Sam came to one of the summits and we met there. And like, honestly, I always say it, she's like my soul sister. Funny enough, our visions are very opposite. So we help each other a lot. So like
It's hilarious.
when she came to see me in Montreal, like in the daytime, I was like, Sam, I got you. Like, I was helping her. And then at nighttime, she was helping me. So it's great. Like even in the hotel, she's like, what channel are we watching? I'm like, I got this. Don't worry. And like so, like we work really well together. Like when we went shopping, she's like, Shaini, what color am I looking at? Like, so we help each other out a lot, and like we helped each other with the summit, and like it's great to get to know people who are going through the same thing. Like our friends will say they understand, and they do. They're there for us. But like it takes another visually impaired person to like understand your blind jokes or understand your actual frustration. So like we bonded really quick. I think it took us like an hour to like bond.
Oh yeah,
I
it was
feel
very
like
fast.
I feel like before I met Sam, in general, I was ignorant, and I love how you say the word ignorant, because I felt that I was ignorant when it
Oh, I
comes
was ignorant too.
to
Yeah.
blindness. Because when I think of blindness, I think you're like 100% blind. I didn't know anything about vision
Yeah.
loss or
Yeah.
anything like that.
And I wear glasses, so automatically people are like, "Oh, but your glasses fix it, right? Like that's why you wear glasses."
Yeah.
I wouldn't be considered legally blind with my glasses, but like that's the thing. Well, not everyone knows, right? So like I didn't know till I started learning for myself and did research, and my family and my friends only know because of me. So like I know it's easy to get mad at people when they say stuff, but like, I bite my tongue and I'm like, you know what? They don't know. Maybe they don't know. Give them the benefit of the doubt, you know?
You
Yeah.
can't get mad at something that people don't know.
Exactly.
You can only
Exactly.
get mad and when you explain it to them and they're still ignorant.
Exactly.
And that's exactly brings me back to the whole point about people not realizing, why am I using an accessible parking permit? And I mean, a little funny story about kind of where I'm coming from, because it's a little different with me. I have days where I literally have no energy and have not been able to walk just out of exhaustion, because my legs are just killing me from my heart working so hard. And I remember this one time that I was at Busch Gardens or SeaWorld in Florida, and I was with my parents. I was probably about 12 years old at the time, and anytime my parents took me to theme parks, I would actually be in a wheelchair. And because I just couldn't walk it, there was no way, I didn't have the energy, so I would be in a wheelchair. And I remember this time my mom had an ice cream cone and with an ice cream on it, and all of a sudden a seagull came flying up to her and like took a chunk of her ice cream out, and then flew
like
off
something
with
from
the
a
ice
movie.
cream from the ice cream. And I let out a scream and ran out of my wheelchair at like 100 miles an hour.
No.
My mom was joking. My mom was joking that everybody would have thought that I was cured.
Oh my God.
That happened to me in high school. So when I went to high school, I did O&M. And for people who don't know, or like O&M is orientation and mobility lessons. So when I went to high school, it was so much bigger than my elementary school. There was like 2,000 kids. So I did a little bit of O&M training so that I would know where all my classes were, because I couldn't see like the door numbers. And so I used it for grade 9. I got really comfortable. And then obviously for grade 10, I was like, you know what? Like I'm going to try going to school without it. Like I know the building layout well enough. I have like really good friends I can walk from class to class with. Like I can manage, like I'm familiar enough. So I'll give it a shot. And I remember like finding out maybe like a few months into grade 10 that people thought I had been cured. Like people who were in grade 10 the year before, like grade 11 and 12s, were like, oh my God, like the blind girl can see. And I'm like, Jesus didn't come to my house and rub mud in my eyes. Like that is not what happened. Like I don't
How
know
does
what
it work?
Yeah, and it's very weird that people don't realize that sometimes, like especially with a visual impairment or other disabilities too, sometimes it's visible and sometimes it's invisible, and you don't know. And it's not me that changes; it's just the perceptions of like what people think around me that change.
I was in a wheelchair for 3 weeks when I had surgery to improve my walking. I have cerebral palsy, which is a physical disability, but a lot of people don't. They think that cerebral palsy, all people with cerebral palsy are in wheelchairs, and it's something that Jackie and I talk about a lot. Like she thought herself that people with cerebral palsy are all in wheelchairs. They're not. Not all people with cerebral palsy who have cerebral palsy are in wheelchairs. I have a very mild version of cerebral palsy, So a lot of people, when they look at me, they don't even realize I have cerebral palsy. They don't realize I have anything wrong with me or anything physically challenging, so to speak. I don't want to say anything wrong because there's nothing wrong with me.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, the thing is that when you have, so let's say for people who have chronic pain, so somebody who, let's say, has fibromyalgia or, or lupus, or when you have these random things that just flare up randomly at different times, you can have a day where you're feeling amazing and you can run a marathon, and then a week later, you can not be able to get out of bed. And that's the thing about chronic illness and chronic pain that is really tough for people to understand. And I think that's a common misconception that you see it a lot online and stuff, is like, well, if she was able to do that last week, why can't she come to my party this week?
Mhm.
Well, that's
I find that's the same thing with mental health, with mental illness, because when you're describing the chronic pain, it's almost like you're describing mental health. And I was watching a show recently called Modern Love, and it has 8 episodes. It's an Amazon original, and it has 8 episodes. Each episode has a different storyline, and one of them was about bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder is very different than depression. But in the episode, the storyline is that a woman is suffering with bipolar disorder and just having a hard time managing her her career and her personal life. And there are times where she's like so happy and excited, and she's like over the top, bubbly, has a bubbly personality, and everybody wants to be around her. And then all of a sudden, she's feeling emotionally crippled, and she just doesn't want to go to work. She doesn't want to go on dates. She just can't get out of the bed, out of her bathroom. She's just numb.
Yeah.
So I recommend. It's a really good show. I really recommend you guys watch it.
Everybody heard that one. So we've got recommendations now on our podcast, which is awesome. Now, I mean, out of the 5 of us that are on the panel today, I know, Cynthia, you said that you haven't really had any issues with your own mobility.
No, no.
But you've pointed out something to us that's interesting, because it affects everyone, not just people who have mobility issues, and that is public transit. And so, explain how public transit can be a total nightmare.
Well, I'm a mom of a 20-month-old boy. And because in Toronto, not every subway station is accessible, I'm unable to go places. I mean, okay, fine, right now I'm not taking subway, the TTC, public transit at all because of COVID. But before that, because some stations, I'm unable to use some stations because they only have stairs, and I'm not hauling my kid and a stroller. Think about it. Keep in mind, I weigh 95 pounds. I'm not carrying my 20-pound kid and a stroller down the stairs. I heard about a mom who fell to her death in New York last year because she had to deal with a baby and a stroller.
Oh my God.
That's not going to happen. I don't want that to happen.
No, and that's just the thing, is that people don't realize that a lot of these mobility things that people with visible and invisible disabilities deal with, improving these things could help not just us, but everyone. It could help the general population. I mean, I don't know, I see moms taking their strollers up and down like buses and stuff like that. And back when our streetcars used to have stairs to get on, and you would have always, a lot of people would need help, because I mean, a stroller is heavy. So, and I know, like, once I have a child, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that and haul a stroller up the stairs. I'll faint and end up at cardiac clinic. So, it's just something that would benefit everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long
Shaini,
pause.
I have a question for you. Earlier, you brought up how in your culture you have to hide your disability. What is there like a PC term for people with disabilities in your ancestral language, or is it the most PC term? Does it like not sound PC in English? Because I know that's the case in mine.
like it's not even like the term, it's just the fact, like especially because I'm a girl, and I think I've spoken to some of you guys about this. It's just that in our culture, the girl has to be perfect, because at the end of the day, quote unquote, like our end goal, our aim is to be a good wife and a mom. So we have to be able to take care of someone else's son and our children. So like if something is wrong with us, God forbid, nothing is wrong with me, but like God forbid, in their eyes, the fact that I am visually impaired means that I can't take care of their son or their future grandchildren, or that I'm not going to be able to do stuff. I'm not going to be successful because something is wrong with me. So like people kind of just don't own up to the fact that they have any sort of illness or disability, because they're scared of the way they're going to be seen, or the way that people will think they can't do anything, or they won't be able to do something properly.
So in other words, if you were out in the olden days, especially about your disability, you wouldn't even be considered wife material. Like nobody will match you with anybody.
Honestly, I've already heard it in the grapevine of people saying that, like, oh, like I wouldn't marry her to my son. I wouldn't want her because apparently I won't be able to take care of their son, who doesn't know how to do anything. I'm sorry.
I had
They can take care of themselves. Honestly.
I can take care of myself. I cook, I clean. I moved out. I don't live with my parents anymore. Like I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. And whoever I end up marrying, I hope you can take care of yourself too. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a two-way street, regardless of me having a disability or not. That's just something that I look for in a partner, and in most cases, everyone. So like, I don't know. It's just a lot of times I've heard people say stuff like that, and it's gone through the grapevine of people saying, or people have even told my parents, like, you know, you should start looking for her when she was younger, before her vision gets worse, so people don't realize how bad it really is, or so they don't realize how bad it is. It'll, like, once you're married, like, you know, like he's stuck with her, like, you know, he's stuck being with her.
Which
so,
is an
like,
awful position to put you
so
in,
awful.
like for
It's
your
so
partner. Like that would
awful.
it wouldn't end badly towards you, right? Like that's
Exactly.
an awful way to do it.
It's horrible, but like it's horrible.
I experienced that as well, not culture related, but I experienced that as well when it comes to being considered wife material. I know that when I met my husband's parents, his dad, who is now sadly my father-in-law, he had this whole assumption that, I mean, he of course realized that I have cerebral palsy. He noticed right away. And for years, he kept telling my husband to break things off with me. And he did everything possible to make that happen. He would tell my husband things like, oh, she can't cook, she can't clean, she can't take care of you, she can't work, she'll never find a job. She will be in a wheelchair by 40. And he even went as far as giving my husband a book all about cerebral palsy, like this thick.
Was it from like 1975 when they probably didn't know nearly as much as today?
Oh my God.
Yes. And my husband didn't read it. He had no interest in it whatsoever. I read it. I read the whole thing.
Shit.
Did you school him on his own book after?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, that was like the most badass sentence. She's like, nah, he didn't read it. I read it. Okay. Oh God.
I wanted to know exactly what the book said and exactly what he thought I would be. And it was a book that was written for medical purposes. And I gotta say, yes, there are people who are exactly like as the book says. I'm not gonna deny it. I'm not. But there are people who aren't like as the book says. I am not one of them. And again, the father-in-law refused to get to know me as a person. He just got to know me as a person with a disability. That's all he saw when he looked at me. He wouldn't even look me in the eyes. He wouldn't even talk to me for years. He doesn't know that I have anything else. He doesn't know I have epilepsy. He doesn't know how depression unless he's watching it right now, unless he's watching this episode right now, which I really hope, and I really hope so. Um, so I guess I gotta say thank you to my father-in-law, because I mean, if it wasn't for people like him, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I don't know.
and I feel like especially as women, like there's always like across multiple cultures and like nationalities, the responsibility to like take care of the family falls on the woman, which is hilarious. I find it absolutely hilarious that if we can't like take care of ourselves and cook and clean, we're like awful, like God forbid, but like men just
Sam,
don't take care of
really
themselves and it's like okay.
Sam, it's really hard to unlearn centuries old beliefs.
Yeah.
Oh
exactly.
no, I know. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that it's like it's unbelievable that it like as in I can't believe it. I'm just saying it's ridiculous. Like I'm calling it out on what it is. I know it's extremely hard to like I even struggle with it. Like watching my family and how my mom was raised, like I'm sure like in most cultures, you know, if your husband is drinking, you like it's the woman's job to say, okay, like that's enough, let's go home now and like take care of him. Even if you're drunk, like you get him into bed and you make sure he's okay. Like it's hard. That maternal instinct is so deep. It's just I don't know. It's a double standard that I think people need to start to get rid of. But I know it's easier said than done, right?
Now, the thing is that something else that is interesting, and I don't know if your families have told you this, because this is something that came up for me, is that I'm not going to identify who, but someone had said to me that I needed to marry someone who wasn't disabled.
Yep.
Because they, I needed to marry someone who could take care of me. And that's what I was told, I guess when I was in my 20s. And as it turns out, my husband is probably the person I know who has like the only person I know with no disabilities, which is weird. So it did turn out that way. And there are still days that, yes, I do need him to take care of me, but I can tell you that I'm also perfectly capable of taking care of him. He was in a cycling accident 3 weeks ago. Who patched him up? I did. I patched him up.
Okay.
You are able to take care of yourself, and you're able to take care of him.
That's right. That's right.
It should be a two-way street, like in a relationship, ideally, right? Like I'm assuming how most of us would. Easier said than done to do, but you would want that to be a two-way street. Like when you're having a hard time, it's great to be able to take care of the person you love, but also be responsible for yourself. It's really frustrating that some of those ideals are still very one-sided in a lot of places.
And that's the thing. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, like in our case, like it's out in the open, like now that we have a disability, but like say we were like people without any illnesses and we were to get married to someone, like you're saying in sickness and health, if something were to happen later on, like what are you just gonna get up and leave and be like, sorry, like I can't like take care of you, you can't.
I was just gonna say that,
you know.
yes.
It's we're all human. At one point we all need to be taken care of for some reason or another, and it's just human nature, but we're all still able to take care of ourselves. We just have our own way of doing things.
But the problem is that a lot of people, unfortunately, and I've seen this happen to people, that when something happens to one person, the other person bolts from the relationship. It's happened to me. I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to probably all of us. And it's
I wasn't in a lot of relationships, so I can't really say that it had.
Yeah, well,
I get it all the time.
I mean, my husband, to be honest, the guy I married is probably one of my only serious relationships that I've ever had.
And I know that what he said was that it didn't matter to him when you told him about, which was amazing, because I mean, it's a very difficult thing to tell someone that you have this issue and that sometimes I might need extra help, sometimes I'll be fine, and sometimes I might need a little assistance. And
I honestly have no idea what I would do if I were dating again, because when I was dating, I was just telling my dates that I have cerebral palsy. Now it's like, I have cerebral palsy, epilepsy, depression. Like, how much can you handle?
Just give them the book. Like here.
It's 2020. It's 2020. Everybody's learning to actually be a little bit more. Also, everybody's kind of getting used to uncertainty now. So, I mean, the fact is that even though you have all those disabilities, you're probably still more stable than the year 2020. at this point.
Look at the
Because
bright side.
yeah, exactly. So just kind of bringing it back to the topic of like getting around and stuff. What do you guys want to see in public policy that really kind of puts forward, making everything a little bit more accessible and easier for everybody to use on a good day, bad day, whether you're you have an invisible disability, visible disability, or you're just, quote unquote normal. What do you guys want to see?
Elevators that work on public transit.
Yes,
Yeah.
and escalators, if they break down, fix them in like the same day and not wait like 2 months. Because like where I take public transportation to get to work, like I pray as I enter that hallway, I'm like, please be working, because it is a steep ass staircase. And like even my friends who are sighted, they're like, I don't even know how you do it. They're like, we even have trouble with those stairs. So like it's like a very popular metro station in Montreal. So like I don't understand how the elevators there are always either not working or the escalator is just not working for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not just us. Like I've seen like people with strollers, and like I feel bad because like I personally can't help that person down the stroller. I'd probably hurt them if I helped her.
I've done it before, and it's terrifying. Like I'll have a mom kind of look at me, and I'm like, I'll help, and then like I'm just like, don't drop the baby, don't drop the baby, don't drop the baby. Like it's so awkward.
In my case, like I don't have a guide dog or a white cane, so like people, I'm a normal human being, like a normal sighted person, and it's like, oh, look at this millennial, she's just walking by and not even trying to help me.
And I know,
I'm like holding on to the railing, hoping I don't die falling down, Like,
well, as I was saying, I told a couple of you last week, is that in Toronto, on our public transit network, which for people who aren't in Toronto, it is called the TTC. So if you keep hearing us reference the TTC, that is not called Trying to Conceive, which is the popular hashtag. Yes, TTC is Trying to Conceive. So a lot of times when I hashtag TTC on Instagram, I get like the Trying to Conceive crowd liking my posts.
No.
So it's really funny. But the one thing about the TTC is that, it is, there be escalators that don't work for months. There will be. And the other thing is that, and this is an issue across Toronto, Shaini, I don't know if this is an issue in Montreal, but is that when elevators break down and you need to use an elevator and you can't necessarily climb 10 flights of stairs, even a healthy person can't necessarily climb 10 flights of stairs. An elevator can be out for months and months and months. And that's because there is a shortage of elevator parts across Canada. And there's a shortage of actual people who can install those elevator parts. And that's another thing that we're seeing, is that like constantly we're up against, we have to kind of wait for them to fix the elevator for 2 months and all that. And so I'm going to have to nearly kill myself and climb the stairs. And especially now with COVID and everything, and you don't want to be in an elevator that's packed. It's absolutely dangerous. You should only be 2 people in an elevator at most. So I think that one of the things that needs to be done is, to get more awareness out there. And I don't know how this is done. Like, I'm not the expert here on construction, but get more awareness to the elevator, like the industry of people who are making these parts for these elevators, and saying like the people with visible and invisible disabilities are depending on you. And this is so rough because I'm actually on the board of my condo, and I know one of our elevators was out for 2 months. And it's just, like, I don't know I don't know about how many people are using mobility aids in my building, but I can't imagine that, that it would be very easy. And the problem is that the exorbitant cost to fix these things, it can cost up to like $15,000 to fix an elevator. And so kind of all of this needs to change. This needs to change. We can't keep seeing this.
I've seen people have to, like, when elevators have broken down on like train platforms downtown, I've actually bigger trains, not the TTC. I've actually seen people in wheelchairs, because you can get like an escort. So usually when I'm downtown and I'm heading home, I'll get someone to actually escort me up to the train, because I can't see when things are posted on the screen, like what platform they're on. And I remember I was sitting in the accessibility car, and I remember seeing them have to take a person in a wheelchair up on another elevator and actually cross over the tracks. And they were like holding the wheelchair in like this botched way. And I'm like, you cannot be doing that. Like, you can't have a person in a wheelchair have their spine, like it doesn't work that way. Like, you have to, and I felt so bad for the customer service person as well, because that it's not that person's like
fault.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
how crap would you feel? And also for the person in the wheelchair, obviously.
Mhm.
But
He's
like,
probably holding on to it for dear life.
yeah, and she's
Yeah.
probably not trained to do that because you're not supposed to do
Yeah.
that. So like, but there was no other way to get this
Yeah.
person to their train. So like, it really is an issue, and it's in so many ways.
There's
I
another
think
issue.
there's honestly issues everywhere. Like there are
Mhm.
places I go to, for instance, there are restaurants that aren't wheelchair accessible, for instance.
Mhm.
There are elevators that aren't wheelchair accessible. Subways, like
Streetcars, some streetcars still
streetcars,
aren't accessible.
schools aren't
Mhm.
wheelchair accessible. Like
Yeah.
there's one elevator for a huge campus. I'm like, how are people? And there are a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of people with disabilities there,
And
blind,
it's like
in
one
wheelchairs.
person, like one
How?
elevator for every like 5 staircases. Like sometimes
Yeah.
if you just want to go up to one building, you have to go over like 3 or 4 buildings to find an elevator that works, go up, and then go back to the previous building that you were trying to get to in the first place. Like it's so out of
Yeah,
the way.
Yeah.
absolutely. And you
Something
guys
really
reminded me actually that when I was in school, when I was in Seneca, I had a class and where there was, I had a classmate that was blind, and our classroom was way past it, nowhere near the elevator. She couldn't see. She had a service dog, so obviously it was much harder for her to get around to the classroom. Not the administration services thought to move the classroom. It was our teacher that
Oh wow.
demanded that the classroom be changed to right beside the elevator so it would be easier for her to get around to the classroom. So why is it that the teacher is thinking about the stuff rather than the
Yeah.
people in administration services or
And
in
what's
the
hilarious
level?
is half the time people, like the administration expects the person with the disability to have the solution. And it's like, I don't know about the problem until I get there half the time. Like
Exactly.
you're the ones, like, they know months ahead of time. Like when I went to college, I booked an appointment with the accessibility office, I think in like the spring before I went to school in the
Mhm.
fall. So like they have ample amounts of time to figure it and to know, like, hey, if you have a service dog and there's someone also in the same class as you with like a deathly allergy to dogs, figure something out. Like you
Mhm.
don't know that until you get there. And it's just, I find it ironic that the people in power that make the decisions don't actually think ahead for that kind of stuff.
And again, the onus is on you, which is, it shouldn't be. It should not be on the
No.
person with the
No.
disability. The onus should not be on you. So this brings me to another point, and that is that the TTC does have this thing in Toronto where you can actually get a button, a pin that you can wear that says, please offer me a seat. So if you're a person with an invisible disability who can't stand for a long time or needs some assistance, you get the button and, you know, and you put it onto your clothes. And that way you don't have to awkwardly ask someone, can you give up your seat for me?
Mhm.
Okay, sounds like a great idea, right?
Nobody cares.
But a friend, exactly, a friend of mine tells me that she saw a whole bunch of perfectly able-bodied teenagers monkeying around, all wearing the buttons and trying to get seats on the TTC. Now, maybe they did have maybe they did have an invisible disability. It's possible, but chances are they didn't. So this is the other thing too. If we say that we can't do something and we say that we need a seat because
Exactly.
we're not exactly going to put you out of your way just because we're selfish and we want to sit. We're asking you because our safety depends on it or because we're exhausted from living.
But Jackie, there
find-
are some people who won't even give up seats for people who have visible disabilities or
Oh, yeah.
just need a
Yeah.
seat.
These
I mean,
are the
like
people-
I've seen women who are like 36 weeks pregnant or look like they're 36 weeks
Yeah.
pregnant, and
And
they're
people
not.
are just staring at them. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, that frustrates
I
me a
remember
lot.
I was on the train once, and actually that morning at work, I had missed a few steps, so I sprained my ankle at work. So I had taken the train home that day, but it was a packed train, and I went into like the first 4 seats where it's for like mobility people. So I went and sat there, not because of my vision, but because my ankle was sprained and I didn't want to stand. So as I'm sitting there, and there's 3 other people who are able, they're not pregnant or anything, they just happen to sit there earlier. And a pregnant woman is literally walked by me and is standing there. And none of them got up. I got up. And I was like, because no one on the train realizes that I sprained my ankle. So I got up and I'm standing there and she's sitting there and she said, thank you, whatever. And the other 3 people just didn't look. They looked away, didn't make eye contact with me or her. Then one of my coworkers happened to be sitting like 4 things down. So she gets up and she's like, Shaini, why are you standing? You sprained your ankle today. So the other guy felt bad and he was like, oh no, you should sit. I'm like, no, it's fine. You decided not to move. I'm standing. Like, I'm like, you didn't get up for her. Why would you have gotten up for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just people they kind of pretend they don't see, which is really rude because I actually don't see. But like people pretend, like in the morning, people
My
pretend
favorite,
they're sleeping.
because I've had a similar situation where like I've gotten up for pregnant women, and in situations where I've had my cane, I'll like unfold it because obviously I'm standing now, and like the people's reactions are amazing, and I'm like, I honestly, this is why God gave me 10% of my vision so I could see these glorious reactions. And I'm like, yeah, bitches.
I find that these are the people that abuse the rights of disabled people, right? And these are the people that make us not have as much rights because they abuse that and they feel like they can use the things that we are able to use that
It's
are
the same with fake service
right
dogs.
to use.
Fake service dogs are a huge issue. You can literally go on Amazon, get a fake, like a service dog vest, and like it just makes it, they're not trained properly. Even dogs for like anxiety, half the time they don't actually have a special skill or special training. They do, it's just merely their presence that sort of like calms down the owner. And then they give actual service dogs that have had special training and that are trained to be in public places a bad name, and then people don't want to let any of the dogs in.
Yeah.
It's just a shit show.
It takes one bad apple to ruin it for a specific group of people, right? So
yeah, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. And that's the problem, is that, you know, when you're dealing with either invisible or a visible disability, you are dealing with people that just don't choose to respect you, that they don't respect you. It's like a lot of people right now who are saying, well, I'm not worried about COVID, so I'm not wearing a mask. And they don't realize that there's a whole bunch of us that, or they don't care. It's not that they don't realize, it's that they don't care that a whole bunch of us could get COVID and die because you're not wearing a mask. And so just, you know, it's the simple act of just putting on a mask when you go into a public space indoors can save so many lives, but they don't care. And I just find that nobody, it's like, oh, well, you know, my glasses fog up or something like that, or it's uncomfortable. Well, dude, my life is pretty uncomfortable all day. You don't see me complaining. Well, maybe I just did.
Maybe on here we complain.
But this is the platform to complain. This is where we can complain, because honestly, most of the time we're just going through life and living it and doing a damn good job at it, and we're making do with all this.
And honestly, we try to live as normalized as possible as the rest of the world. It just takes us that much more effort, but we're doing it, and we're just like,
but you know, like,
we're just being degraded for all the things that we're trying to achieve.
But that's what happened with that when I referenced in the previous episode, which if you haven't had a chance to watch it, go watch it, episode 6, when I referenced the job that I was let go of because apparently I lied to them about my disability. I lied by omission that I didn't have a disability, which again was not even something I legally had to disclose. My whole thing that I wanted accommodation for was that I was going to be in a conference for a crazy 10-hour day and then had to work several hours after. And I wanted to, you know, have at least a chair. I was told that there might not be chairs and that, you know, I might have to sit on the floor. Well, with my pelvic pain condition, I have some extreme difficulty sitting on a hard floor. It hurts. It hurts like hell. Of course, I'm not going to go and tell someone, tell my male boss, oh yeah, well, it hurts my vagina. But you know,
because a male boss would handle that so well.
He'd be like, what am I supposed to do?
Oh, the word vagina, it's so scary.
But how hard is it to get me a chair or like a cushion or something? I'm not.
And you're not even asking for a special chair.
Just like a regular chair.
So it's something like that. It's like, you know, I just need a chair. Or, you know, if I go to sometimes I've been to a concert where I have to stand, and that's not easy. I'm getting better at it. But of course, there's no concerts now. But like a couple times I do have to point out that people have been really nice. And I've just told them, you know, I do have a heart condition. I've got to sit. I can't actually stand, even though like there's no seats at all. So they'll bring a chair out for me, which has been very good, or I'll work my way to the front so I can sit at the very, very front. And I'm just like, well, I'm short, so everybody can see over me anyway. That's the best thing about like being short. You can move to the front, and therefore you're not blocking anyone. But you know, it's not that hard. These little things that we're asking for, you know, maybe a cushion, maybe a good elevator ride, or an escalator working, or just somebody to give up their seat to us on transit. It's not that hard. And I think the whole thing is we've got to get that message out there that it's these little tiny changes that aren't going to cost people a lot.
Especially when people like ask for changes that are like so ridiculous, and you see your minimal ask and you're like, but why can he get his thing and I can't have mine? Like there's this DJ I follow on Instagram in the UK, and she was saying, she wrote an article about how she's also visually impaired. I believe she has Stargardt's. And she was talking about how when she would go to gigs or clubs, the only like accommodation or thing that she would ask for on the, I think it's called a mixing board, is just like a little light, like something just to make sure everything is well lit, because like she struggled in the dark. And a lot of places like wouldn't do it, or would just be like, oh, like yeah, sure, and then not do it. And she's like, there are DJs, not even necessarily big names, that ask for like huge bottles of vodka and like VIP passes and like all these different stuff for all their friends. And she's like, I just want a little light, a little portable light to stick on the table or whatever, so I can do my job. Like, how is that so hard?
It's ridiculous. And yeah, these little things that we ask for, and ultimately, you know, the more we're accommodated, and the easier it is for us to get to work, the easier it is for us to enjoy tourist activities or anything like that, the better the economy is going to function, because there's going to be more money moving around the economy if we can be moving around.
Well,
and they're going to get more money from us. They're going to be getting more money from us because we're going to be able to attend those and maybe pay for those. So they don't see the whole benefit.
Some of them do now, though. Like a lot of companies are really getting into it because they're realizing they can make a huge profit. Like there's this huge like consumer market they're not tapping into. And I find it so funny that money is the motivator. Like it's not that you care, it's not years of me
it's
asking.
Not the well-being, it's the fact of
exactly
profit, you know,
it's
like
purely profit and popularity.
And
that's all it is.
Unfortunately, and for some jobs too, we are a stat. Like I joke about it at work, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're not gonna let go of me. I'm their visually impaired person of the floor. Like I'm their disability quota for the floor. Like, you know, like it sucks, you know, but like also like it sucks when you hear a story like we go through stuff and you hear about like things of what our like demands or our requests being like rejected, and it's like it's kind of these kinds of things that stop people from living their life. And that's why people like when they see us doing things, they're like, oh wow, like you're visually, we don't see people. Like it's because of shit like this that happens. It scares people from going out and doing things, and like kind of people try and they get rejected and they're like, well, I tried, it didn't work, like, you know. And not everyone has the motivation to keep going, especially if you keep getting rejected all the time. Or if you try, like you get up one day, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go do this today, and like you go to a metro station and you realize, well, I can't really get down to the platform, I'm gonna go back home. Like it sucks because like you can be motivated to do something and you get there and it's not accessible for some of us,
even
you know?
voting for years. When I would go to vote, like there weren't accessible, like there was no large print options. There was nobody. If you tried to ask somebody like, hey, can you read this for me, like they don't want to do that because of privacy stuff, so they get all weird. And I think it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe like a few years ago, they actually had large print ballots, or they said, you know, we have Braille, or you can like come ahead of time, or we can read you the options, like whatever you need.
I think it's because they had enough people complain about that. That's the only reason. Because things change only when enough people complain, or somebody has to die.
Or if somebody looks bad. If someone looks bad in like a huge, because really by not making voting accessible, you are saying that I do not have, like my vote doesn't matter to you, because like it doesn't, it's whatever. Yeah.
I think what we're going to come out of this episode is saying that, especially, and it shouldn't, again, the onus shouldn't be entirely on us, but it is something, if you are able, I strongly suggest that you can write your local MPP or your MP or your local city councillor, write to your prime minister, write to your premier, write to somebody and say, look, this is what we're facing. These little things could help us so much. It's not going to cost that much. this is how we can make the world function better for people with disabilities. And it's not that hard. So I think that also that able-bodied people should also be doing this and actually, saying something and being like, everybody needs the ability to vote. Everybody. And now I'm glad you brought that up, because honestly, like, that is something that, especially in these days, that you want to have the ability to vote.
Absolutely. And it frustrates me to no end when people are like, oh yeah, I didn't feel like it. And I'm like, I walked. I can't even drive. Yeah. I walked my ass to the voting poll. So why, what were you doing? Like, out of curiosity, why did you not vote? Like, I don't understand.
And I'd also like to add that if you are able-bodied, you will know somebody who is not as able-bodied as you, who has a visible disability or invisible disability. And you might not even know it, because a lot of people are so private about their struggles, and they might not be as public as we are, because let's face it, having an illness, having health struggles, it's embarrassing, especially when somebody has a health struggle at a later age, like me and Shaini are. So please keep in mind that you don't know everybody's full story. So be kind and be just an advocate for everything.
Just be mindful that you don't know what's happening behind closed doors or what someone's going through. Like, I always am very cautious now when I'm going around. If I see someone walking a little slower in front of me, like, since I go through it, I'm like, okay, you don't know what's going on in someone else's life, like, we can't just assume that someone looks normal, quote unquote normal, that nothing's going on or they're not going through something.
Yeah.
And in my case, I don't really want to rip off my shirt to show people my scar to prove it. That's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. I don't really want to do that. But there's been times that I swear that I will, like that time that I was questioned for parking in an accessible spot, that I was questioned for that. And it was a boiling hot day, much like it is in Toronto today. It's 31 degrees. It's crazy. And I couldn't walk that far from the parking lot into this building that I was going into. It was actually to visit my grandfather, who was in the hospital. And I just remember, like, feeling when they questioned me about it, I was like, I will, if I have to, I will rip off my shirt and show you all the scars on my chest and show you how my chest is indented and therefore pressing on the rest of my body. And then you can actually realize why I'm using that spot. This is a topic I get very passionate about. So
no. I had a case where I was just going shopping. I was going shoe shopping, and obviously, like, it's very exhausting for me to go shoe shopping, with the standing and the constant moving, and shoe shopping is always a hassle because I can't wear all shoes. But that's another story.
I can't even buy shoes.
Okay, so
my feet are too small, 4.5.
I was really at some
it's not
point
funny, to be honest.
I was really exhausted, so I found a chair and I wanted to sit on the chair. So I approached it. So I come and, like, as I'm about to sit down, this woman runs up to me and she's like, starts yelling at me, oh, what, you don't have a right to be here, blah blah blah. So I'm just like quiet there, like I'm just like not understanding what's going on. Anyway, I find another chair to sit down for, and then after a while, I see that woman having this conversation and complaining to her friend about me, about what happened. So guess what? I come up to her and I'm like, see this hand? See my right hand? Do they look the same to you? So then she just went quiet. And then I turn around.
Don't mess with her.
No.
Oh my God. I turn around and I look at her friend and I'm like, you know what? You should find new friends.
Oh, snap.
But was that chair meant for staff? Is that why she got mad?
No, it was just there.
Because sometimes chairs, like weird. Some chairs are staff
like designated,
sitting in the customer chair. I don't know.
No, if she was just a shopper.
It's really weird because I also think like people like, and I'm sure we're all guilty of this. I know I'm probably guilty of it. And like, because you're so used to being alone, like it's not easy to see when other people have a disability or a struggle or a challenge. You automatically assume they're able to. And then sometimes, like Shaini said, like you kind of pause and you're like, okay, like are they you know, I don't know what they're also dealing with, but it's also an internal struggle because you're like, okay, you seem all right, and but I seem all right, so I don't know. It's so hard to tell sometimes.
Like I get the worst. I think I got a message on social media. So I guess one of my followers, who I don't really know, saw me on the train. But like I still use my phone, but you don't realize that it's like super zoomed in. My font is humongous, like a child's book.
Me too.
And they accused me of lying about being blind and using it to get followers, and that I'm not actually blind. Because yes, I chose this life of being blind. Like, and I remember my first Young Leaders Summit. I went out to go help get another visually impaired person their lunch. So I went out, and we all had like these lanyards on. Someone came up, and she was a volunteer, and she was also a South Asian girl. And she was like, oh, so like, are you here volunteering too? I'm like, no, actually, I'm one of the young leaders. She goes, but like, don't you have to be blind to be a young leader? And I'm like, oh, I am. I'm visually impaired. I have RP. But she's like, but you're too pretty to be blind.
Oh,
And I was
my
like,
God.
I
hate that sentence. That sentence is so annoying.
But funny enough, later on, she was volunteering in our discussion room. And like, we were all talking about like some things that people have like assumed about us and stuff, and so I had said it not realizing she was in the room because I couldn't see her. And she actually spoke up after, and she was actually in tears at the end of the discussion because she felt so bad. And that's like an example of people just not knowing, right? And it's like about being awareness. But like there's a lot of times where I get stuff where people just assume I'm lying because of the things I do, because they're like, there's no way
especially
you're as blind as you say you are, because how are you doing this and this? It's just that we find our own way of doing it. Like it might take us a little longer, but we still get the job done. You know,
especially if you're helping another person. Like if you're helping another person who's disabled, they just assume that you're like a helper or a fully abled person.
Yeah, like at our Young Leaders Summit, like usually here it's my family helping me, but like sometimes at the Young Leaders Summit, there are other people who have less vision than me and Sam, so we're helping each other. Like, you know, it's different because we're around different people, but like people just assume that since we're helping, that, oh, you've been lying all this time because you're helping someone.
Exactly.
So we are going to have to wrap up in a couple minutes, but there is something that I just want to point out before we end this episode, and we kind of did touch on it a little bit earlier on, but kind of going back to this is accessibility to washrooms, and this is something that is also this is probably the biggest sticking point, and
I know where you're going.
Well, we had a few episodes ago, we had my cousin on, and he has Crohn's disease, and so he needs to be able to, you know, have access to a washroom when he goes out. And of course, he looks normal. Nobody's knowing that he's like his stomach is churning inside and he needs to get to a toilet. And so what's happened with all of this COVID stuff as things are reopening is that washrooms are not open for the public.
No.
And this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous that you need to get, like, people, they need to ensure, whether it's, you know, the government level or the actual employers, probably in most cases private corporations, the employers need to supply the cleaning products and the disinfectants that they need so that people can use the washrooms. This is absolutely insane. So someone like my cousin, he can't go out yet because he needs the ability to access a washroom if he absolutely needs to. And a lot of times businesses, if you ask to use the washroom, even before COVID, they will be like, well, you have to buy something. Yeah. And this needs to change. I mean, it's a basic human right to be able to have access to a bathroom, regardless of disability.
But it's not just have access to a bathroom, it's also access to a bathroom that is accessible. Like, if as a mom, I mean, like, I don't really have mobility issues right now, but as a mom, if I'm alone with my son, I'm pushing him on a stroller, I need to have a family bathroom so I can take him in with me when I'm peeing.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because you mentioned that, and just kind of not having to do with this episode, but when I was in Tokyo and Kyoto in Japan last year, and the best things about the bathrooms there, they were so amazing. Their bathrooms are just so incredible compared to Toronto bathrooms or anything in Canada. And they have, Cynthia, in Tokyo, they have places where you can put your baby so that you don't have to sit your baby on your lap when you're using the toilet. You actually have like a little, they have a holder on the door, the back of the stall door, where you could put your baby. And I mean, it's probably it's not, yeah, it was totally safe. I mean, it's probably not the cleanest, but then again, like Japan is they're extremely clean. So like, as I said, you could eat off public transit there. It was like off the floors. It was so clean.
Now we need changes in Canada.
Oh my God. Between the cleanliness and the accessibility and the access to washrooms, there needs to be so many changes here. It's just crazy. So that's why it was really important to have this discussion today. And I'm so glad that everybody joined me. And we have a little surprise. Well, it's not a surprise because I'm going to ruin it right now. But Shaini's actually going to join us on our next episode as well. So we want to thank her for that because she's going to contribute to our next episode, which is going to be really interesting. Because we're going to be talking about basically fertility and having children. And that's going to be a very interesting topic because Cynthia has an amazing story to tell, which we're so looking forward to hearing. And then the rest of us all have the rest of us are all experiencing interesting things as well that have to do with that. So I am really, really glad that all of you have joined us today. This has been wonderful. Any final thoughts before we go?
Changes are needed.
Oh my God. Also, like, just throwing it out there because we were talking about bathrooms, accessible like signage on tampon dispensers in bathrooms, like braille or large print or something, because like, dear God, I have not ever been able to use a freaking, I'm like, what? I just turned, like, I don't know which one says tampons and which one says pads, and like,
those things still
where to put the freaking, I mean, they're terrifying to me.
I don't trust bathroom tampons anyway.
I know. I'm like, do I want to put that inside? But yeah, anyway, just aside, total other
That's a whole
topic.
different topic.
That's a whole different topic, and they should be made free because anyway, they should all.
You're not. I don't trust them.
Yeah, exactly. But we can talk. We can actually. That's a great topic for another time. So thanks for bringing that up because I think we definitely should. But we are going to have to go for today. So thank you so much, everyone, for contributing. This has been awesome, and we want to see changes. We want, if you've been watching this episode and you feel like you kind of agree with us and you see what we're talking about, then make some changes. Go talk about it.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yell and scream about it. Talk to people. Make people aware of this. Put it on your social media. Speaking of social media, if you want to follow us, What's the Difference Podcast on Instagram? What's the Difference Podcast on Facebook? And of course, you are likely watching us right now on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So you can follow us and subscribe on YouTube as well. Listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. If that's where you're listening to us from right now, then we don't need to tell you that. But, and always, if you have a topic you'd like to share with us, you can email us at what'sthedifferencepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks everyone for joining today, and we will see you in a few weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.